The Dan River spill and the Kingston spill were so dramatic. The pictures of the muddy, poisonous sludge up to the second floor of a two-story home captivated the country.
And whether it's a true catastrophe where we actually see this gross gray sludge spilling into our river, or if it's just a slow seeping of heavily contaminated water moving into our river, it's still a disaster.
The reality is it's more of a silent killer that trickles into water, that gets into our bodies in a way that is not quite so cinematic.
And so worst case scenario here probably in Metro Atlanta would be just a long-term consistent failure of their controls for this coal ash waste that allows it to mix with groundwater and then flow into the Chattahoochee. And then it's going to potentially contaminate drinking water supplies downstream.
When I started looking into coal ash and the chemicals released from coal ash ponds, I was dealing with some bladder issues and pain that was inexplicable. And my doctor said, well, have you had your water tested?
We have decades of coal that has been burned and ash that has accumulated. What's left after you burn coal is an incredibly toxic stew. It's cadmium, it's selenium, it's arsenic. You do not want this stuff near you. You don't want it on your skin, you don't want it in your lungs, you don't want it in your water.
And as I looked at these chemicals, I saw that some of them were associated with reproductive issues like endometriosis, which I was diagnosed with last year. My mom also has endometriosis, and by the time she was 30, she had had a complete and total hysterectomy because the endometriosis was so bad. And being someone who has both PCOS and endometriosis, there's just not a lot of answers of where these diseases come from and how they manifest and show themselves in the body.
We know that coal ash is hazardous to human health. Protecting somebody's health means protecting where they live. And what we have to realize is that as the problem of pollution gets bigger and bigger, we are just as vulnerable. There's no group of people that are safe from these health risks. And so in order to protect ourselves, it really is to protect these other communities.
I felt as if Georgia Power was partially responsible because there are cobalt and boron and sitting in this groundwater that was the source of my family's well water until I was like 4 years old.
When Georgia Power talks about the plans it has for dealing with coal ash waste that's sitting in unlined pits right past this structure you see behind me, they're talking about doing it in terms that meet the standards of the rules that the state set in 2016. That's not enough, because what it's going to lead to is 6 million tons of coal ash waste sitting in a large unlined pit about 70 feet from the banks of the river right here. So they've had ash ponds 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they've moved all the ash into this one consolidated pit and are mounding it up, and eventually they're going to cover it with some sort of cap and leave it there forever. But a cap doesn't matter when there's nothing under all of this toxic waste to keep it from eventually commingling with groundwater, seeping through the groundwater into this river right here. And so the worry is that groundwater can take the heavy metals, cadmium, boron, arsenic, selenium that we know is in coal ash and carry it away from the pit through the ground. I mean, groundwater's always moving, and so it moves from a groundwater problem and becomes a surface water problem. We don't have a lot of drinking water wells in Metro Atlanta, but we all rely on the Chattahoochee River for our drinking water, and many communities downstream do too. And so if we have toxic heavy metals from coal ash moving into the surface water, it's going to be a huge problem.
You can do something. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have connections and political influence. You can just be a regular person who writes a bunch of emails like I did, or, makes phone calls or shows up to the town hall meeting and says, my family deserves better. I deserve better, my kids deserve better. The plants and animals that are our siblings in this ecosystem deserve better. You can actually make a difference.